Elizabeth and Jesinta, thank you very much for joining us. So, Elizabeth, as a Sex Discrimination Commissioner, and you've been in the role now for
7 years.
7 years.
I know, longest ever.
What do you see? Elizabeth and Jesinta, thank you very much for joining us. So, Elizabeth, as a Sex Discrimination Commissioner, and you've been in the role now for
7 years.
7
I know,
years.
longest ever.
What do you see as the biggest challenges around women understanding their personal finances? How do we get women to take responsibility for their personal finances?
You're right, because I think for young women, it's not something that's taught in the education system necessarily. But not only that, I think when we look at, you know, being a good woman, maybe even a strong woman, finances don't necessarily play a part. Whereas if we looked at what makes a man strong, economic power is one of the key things that makes him strong. Yes. So, I mean, I say to my daughter every day, I say, now repeat after Mum, a man is not a financial plan. We need our own economic
Do you say that every day?
Well, not every day. Every week, though, I say that's the most important thing. And it is, because with economic power comes power in a relationship, power in organisations, the power to have choices in your life. I actually think it's the issue of our age for women, and that is economic independence.
Well, I think it's really important to have Jesinta here because you would be quite independently wealthy anyway. You were runner-up Miss Universe. Yeah. I hesitate to ask whether you're earning more money than your fiancé. That would be kind of a lot of money.
About half as much. And I'm proud to say that too, you know. It's probably one of the first males that I've met who's actually earned more
money than you.
Than me, you know. And I think, you know, your finances don't define who you are, and it doesn't... you know, it doesn't make you any better than anyone else, but I do think financial independence is so important.
For women.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, you sit on many global bodies as well, so you have an access to stories that we don't see much of in Australia. The domestic violence situation we know is huge here. I think it's probably one of the biggest issues that we confront as modern women. Where do you think we're headed in this country? Are we going to get real change, or are we still talking too much and not actually doing anything in this area?
Yeah, look, I think there has been in the last year a shift from talk to action, and I think that's really important. But if I can just say this, and that is that domestic violence is at epidemic proportions, not just here in Australia but globally. What I do know, and just coming back from the United Nations a couple of days ago, is that there are now more women living in an intimate relationship characterised by violence than there are malnourished people on the planet.
Figures are so great. Has it touched either of your lives?
Well, it's touched, not personally my life, but in my extended family. Right. Yes, most definitely. And, you know, it's interesting what you do know, when you walk into a group, 1 in 3 women will have experienced some form of physical violence. 40% of that will have been domestic or family violence. The internet is becoming a new medium for tracking, controlling and violence against women. And, you know, the idea that, you know, that tracking devices, and I see this, I hear from women every day in the women's refuges that I go around, so they'll move to an undisclosed location, essentially a safe house, and next thing their partner will be walking out the front. How's that? Well, because the kids' toys have got GPS technology put in them. The car, he's got a tracking device on the car. If you put you know, track my wife into Google, you will get so many millions of hits.
It's so disturbing.
It's really, the nature of it's changing, but the heart of it comes back to control and gender inequality. That is a power imbalance between men and women.
Jesinta, you're around football clubs. Yeah. Are you alarmed from what you see, or do you think there is improvement?
I think, you know, with my experience of Lance, obviously, you know, he's such a gentleman and he's the man that's going to be my husband. So, you know, with him, you know, I haven't seen anything with him, but with other men, I've definitely seen it. And I think the most shocking thing for me is the way that young women, or women in general, act around these sports stars. And it's something that's very, very disappointing for me. I have seen things in clubs that would make mothers' skins crawl. And
like what? What are we talking about?
I've seen girls lift skirts up and put men's hands under, you know, under their skirts. This was even before I knew Lance, you know, out and about in some places in Melbourne. You see a lot, and it's almost like they will do anything to have the glory of being with a footballer.
So we've got the Sex Discrimination Commissioner sitting next to you.
How do we change that?
How do we change that? What do you say?
It is really disappointing to hear that. But I do think, I mean, sporting icons like your fiancé and other really powerful, decent men, because they do have a lot of power, they have a lot of influence. When they stand up and actually speak out against, say, violence against women, about that type of behaviour, that will have an impact. People will listen.
Instead of, you know, when a message comes through of a girl showing it all around to their mates or whatever, there needs to be, I don't know, it's like a cultural shift. No, that's actually not okay.
You hear this a lot in the global discourse, is that particularly in Western nations like Australia, that we sexualise women. We're seen as sexual objects, sexual toys, and maybe when we're seen like that, women start to behave like that.
I want to pick up, though, on the male aspect of it and the champions of change.
Yeah.
Because you set that up. That'll be your legacy. There was some criticism. Can we get men involved in increasing the numbers of women in leadership roles inside companies? Shouldn't we be able to do it without them? I think you both agree that it's really important to get men on side.
Yeah, absolutely, because I started to understand after a couple of years in the role, and as Jesinta was saying, we women are in heated agreement about most things. Including freedom of expression. You should be able to wear whatever you want to say. I'm with you.
Particularly when you look like this.
Yeah, well, exactly. But I think I started to understand, actually, that we don't necessarily hold the levers of power in organisations, in nations. And what we need to do is we need to work with those who have power to create change in the system. So when I started to think about that a bit more, I thought, well, actually, that's about men taking the message of gender equality to other men in relation to violence, but also in relation to women's leadership. And that's when I decided, I thought, OK, well, if that's the deal, I'm going to pick up and ring Australia's most powerful and influential men. And that's what I did.
And how's it going?
It has been
Are they really
amazing.
committed, or are they just ticking a box?
There is no gender washing in our strategy, no chance. You don't act, you're out. No freeloaders. Yeah.
What's your idea of success around the male champions of change?
Well, it's when they don't need me. Success would be for every man in Australia to be a male champion of change, and not only that, when they're out there really actively taking that message to other men.
I'm going to ask you two a couple, two last questions, and I'll start with Elizabeth. You've had an incredibly successful career. You're accomplished across so many areas, and now you're on the global stage. You're married. You have 2 children. What does success look like to you?
Well, for me, success is very much about just the loving relationships that I have with my kids, my beautiful husband, my sisters and friends, but also knowing for me that I've done something that's taken us forward, because I've started to understand that progress is not made in one big leap. It's a lot of small intentional steps, and I want to be part of that picture. So that's really what success is for me.
Incredible.
What does success look like to you, Jesinta Campbell?
I think, you know, very simply, it's waking up with a smile on my face. And I know that that sounds very simple, but it comes back to, you know, what you said, leading a life of meaning. And, you know, I always have a goal that, you know, when you meet someone, you want to leave them better than they were when you met them. And that's how I try to live my life as well. Do what you can with what you have.
Awesome. Both of you, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Helen.
Thanks.